Three, two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA. And with me
And
here
this is
is
Dex.
Tex from our Twitch rivals team championship team of Twitch rivals back in January. How's it going, Tex?
It's going good. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being here. We actually have some like Blizzard news and stuff to talk about. Last week with Shady, I was so happy he was doing his thing with Twitch chat drafts and stuff. So we had a lot to talk about, but without like just complaining about Blizzard. But this week, something that I thought Blizzard would have done 2 weeks ago, something actually happened. They did not have new buckets, but they at least gave us micro adjusts. Micro adjusts are now live. So let me run over first what has been adjusted up and down. Warlocks and Rogues have both been nerfed. Mage, Warrior, Druid, Paladin have been buffed. And Hunter, Priest, Shaman are untouched. So what do you think about these micro adjusts and where they leave things, Tex?
So, I mean, Warrior still seems like it's in a really bad spot. As well as the Rogue nerf didn't seem to make too much sense, I didn't think. I think after they nerfed it the first time, it seemed like it was in like probably where it should stay. Um, and then the mage buff, I don't understand completely because it seems like
Yeah.
mage should be okay.
Yeah, Mage got buffed. I think that took everybody up by surprise a little because its win rates on HS Replay was like pretty good, and it got lumped with Warrior, Druid, Paladin, and it's all buff. Um, so I have a theory about Rogue, and my theory about why they nerf Rogue is that they're using bad data. I think that they started using data from the minute that they nerfed Rogue before. And so, of the data that they collected, because it's of average players, a lot of the rogues actually played were probably still old decks. And so, win rates were from the old decks. Because if you're like a casual player, like how many arenas do you play per week, right? Like one? And if you were playing Rogue before Rogue got nerfed, right? Afterwards, you're not going to play Rogue again. You know it just got nerfed. Uh, or maybe you just don't get to like draft it again, right? So I don't know. I think there's a lot of data contamination there, maybe that's not showing up on HS Replay because HS Replay has a more dedicated player base. Or else I don't know why Rogue got nerfed. Like and Mage got buffed, right? Because Mage was at around 50% in HS Replay, got buffed. Now is like 51%. Who knows where it'll stop? Rogue was at like 50% win rate before this nerf. Now it's at like 44 or 46, or I forget where it's at, but it's pretty bad now on HS Replay at least.
Yeah, it's it's around 46, I think.
Yeah, 46%. So it was at 50% ish, like pretty fine. Now it's at 46%. Um, and it's just weird. Like, it's throughout the history of Hearthstone, I don't think there's ever been a meta where Rogue was a easy to play class for average players. Like, it
Yeah,
always seemed. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it was never like it was always a dominant class for top players, but never a good class for like average players.
Yeah,
Like it was hard to play with.
yeah, you got that weird hero power doing stuff. You have like way too many options generally, especially in the early game. Your mulligan matters a crap ton, and the thing with average players is like mulligan consistency is very poor. It sometimes involves a deeper understanding of the game that I think people realize how to mulligan, even or maybe especially in limited formats. Um, so yeah, so when Blizzard basically stepped out and did this nerf on Rogue, they were effectively saying like HS Replay's data is not showing what's actually happening with our data, and with Blizzard's data, Rogue is favored. Rogue is getting a higher than 50% win rate, significantly so that they wanted to actually nerf it. So I don't know. I don't buy it. It's never happened in the history of the game, and that it would happen now after a nerf without like me actually even seeing anything in the game that would indicate that. I don't know.
Yeah, lingering decks might be the essential cause. I don't know how they're going about using their statistics because they could just use if they filter it right, they could just filter it so that decks created before a certain date don't count. But
Mm-hmm.
that's assuming that they filter their things right. So
Assuming Blizzard's doing any of this right, I think is the poor assumption compared to assuming that they did something wrong, probably many things wrong, just unsure of which parts they got right and which parts they got wrong. Okay, so anyway, Rogue is nerfed now, guys. Don't play Rogue. It's not that bad, right? If Rogue is 46%,
it's still better than Warrior. Still picking over Warrior.
Yeah, if Rogue is a 46% win rate for your average player, or for like an HS replay player, it's probably around 50% win rate for a top player. So if you're really good, or if you just like really like Rogue and it's like your jam, I don't think it's at that bad of a place. But it was certainly unnecessarily nerfed. I think that's a pretty common thought right now in the community.
Yeah, so I think I think also the fact that they left Shaman untouched kind of felt a little weird. So like it felt like they didn't need to buff Mage, they didn't need to nerf Rogue, and they should have touched Shaman just a teeny bit and buffed it a little bit. So it's like they mixed those three classes up somehow.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know.
So, yeah, just literally an error where someone just like randomly wrote Shaman instead of like looking at the data and I'm gonna type like Rogue here and instead type Shaman, and then the other way around.
Made them mess up Mage too. They like just kind of like circled around. They just went with the wrong class on each.
The fact that that's somewhat believable is what makes me even sadder. Because that should not be even an option on the table.
Blue classes.
Oh god. But okay, so here's my theory on probably not. That may be true. I don't know. I don't know how much I believe my theory, but this is a theory that I'm going to posit on why Shaman was untouched, and I'm going to put the culprit. And this is I'm going to put the culprit on trading, because something that average players really like to do is to overtrade on the board, right? Like rather than going face.
Yeah.
Like they could be playing like. Yeah, like they could be playing Hunter in an aggressive kind of drafted deck, and they'll still be trading like way too much. Like you know, you see this in every single meta, regardless of what the right choice is. So if the right choice is to trade, they do better. If the right choice is to go face, they do worse. Shaman, because of one card, because of Fountain, actually really supports this whole trading philosophy, which makes it like pretty easy to play. You add the fact that RNG doesn't affect average players anywhere near as much as it affects good players, and Shaman's still a very RNG class. And you add on top of that the only other way / the complementary way to play Shaman, which is with Jades. Shaman's being the best Jade class right now, and Jade being generally a fun thing to do. It's not like Jades are under bucketed or anything. They're generally kind of bucketed correctly, but it's really
kind of hard to get to work.
Yeah, it's really easy to draft a Jade deck too. Right? Like you see a Jade, you pick a Jade. This is not like a difficult drafting philosophy.
Not a philosophy difficulty. It's sometimes getting a cohesive Jade deck to work is the hard part.
Right. And if you're a average player and you're mostly in this like 2-win to like 4-win meta where everyone's over trading, Jades are even better because Jades build up over time. So
yeah. The longer the game goes, the better they get.
Yeah. So you have this class that's kind of set up with all these new cards and returning cards where the best things that they do all favor the meta that you're in. So the HS replay meta, which is the 4.5 win meta, like average meta. So people there probably, get to like 2-1 or 3-1 pretty regularly and, all that other stuff. Shaman may not be performing too well, but I can buy it that Blizzard's data is right and that they, for the average player, and that they're not like making necessarily a like, an error writing the name of the class that should be moved.
Class down. I can buy that. That's a decent argument because I will say, I think even for myself back when I was still learning a lot, like I would overtrade all the time, and I can definitely see that being almost a benefit. It's not a benefit, but like if you're gonna overtrade with the class, I think Shaman is one of those classes right now that it would be more beneficial to if you're trying to go for these fun Jade decks or these late game control decks.
Yeah. I mean, that's my conspiracy theory / post not nerf, post not touching the Shaman explanation of why Blizzard did what they did.
trying to reason out why things happen.
Yeah, trying to
It's been
understand.
made. Yeah.
Trying to make sense of this crazy arena world we live in.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you have the three weird things that happened. Rogue got nerfed, Mage got buffed, and Shaman didn't get moved. And if you look at the win rates, Shaman's where it was because it didn't get moved. It maybe moved up like slightly along with everyone else just because they nerfed Warlock. Rogue got moved, win rates went down, and Mage's win rates went up because they were at 50% and they were totally fine. They were a little above 50% actually. And now they're at like what, 52%?
51.
51%? Something a bit higher.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be, like, entirely could be that mages are actually so good because, in large part, because of Conjurer's Calling, and that average players are still just not taking Conjurer's Calling.
Because it's up against flame strikes and stuff.
Yeah.
So they're like, I don't want to take it.
Yeah, and it kills one of your own minions. No one likes to do that. So maybe the OP cards that Mage have that are misbucketed and all that aren't being touched by average players. I don't know. Point is, right now, Mage is very strong. What other classes are strong right now, you think, besides Mage?
Yeah, I've seen pretty consistent results with Priest in terms of I haven't played too much, but I've watched quite a bit the last couple days and trying to get a good read for the meta since I knew I'd be on this podcast. And Priest seems pretty consistent quality wise, and the strength of their curve seems really strong with cards of such as Talon Priest and the 4/7, and they seem to have a really strong curve that if you can keep the board into the early game, you can just win in the late game with the strong hero power on the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you get plenty of late game cards as usual as Priest, so you're kind of hitting all the good spots right now with Priest. It's also part of that second tier after Warlock in the prior meta, right? With Rogue, Warlock, Priest, and I don't know. I would say Druid and Mage asterisk. Mage and Druid got buffed, so they're going to still be doing very well. Rogue got nerfed, so they're probably not in that tier anymore. But Hunter and Priest didn't move, so they're probably both still in that tier. And how is Warlock? How is that Warlock nerf? Because Warlock's got nerfed, and if you look at the offering rates, pretty hard. Abyssal Enforcers, percentage of Warlock decks with Abyssal, percentage of Abyssal of decks seen in the arena with Abyssal Enforcer from HS Replay was at 14%, and then it's been dropping since the nerf, and right now it's at something like 9% or something, maybe 10%. So that's a pretty hefty reduction in Abyssals.
Well, it still seems that Warlock is at the top, at least based off HS Replay stats. So we'll have to see if they keep dropping as we get further into the meta and as these older decks go away. But it still seems like it's a pretty good class to play. I think just because of the faster paced meta compared to the older sets, with the older sets, as well as some of the new tempo cards and less initiative. It's essentially been tempoing out hard and then using cards like the evil cards to just use that tempo to your advantage. And playing that Zooish, more on the board aggressive style is just working for Warlock right now.
Yeah. And Warlocks, the thing with Warlocks is they're never too dependent on quality of cards. Because of that hero power, yeah. So when you're reducing, and when you're auto adjusting them and micro adjusting them and lowering the goodness of the cards that they see, it's just always going to affect Warlock less than other classes because that's not where their power is. Instead, their power is in their hero power and how that hero power and playstyle works within the meta. So if the overall meta hasn't changed that much post patch, which I would argue it hasn't. It hasn't gotten noticeably faster or noticeably slower.
No. It's staying still pretty fast, but not aggro hunter OP fast. But yeah, it still seems like a fast meta, but it hasn't changed insanely since the Rogue and Warlock shift.
Yeah, and so your Warlocks are still good. And before the nerfs, your Warlocks were getting like kind of more double-sided board clears than it necessarily needs. It's at least getting offered more of it than it needs. So if you want enough double-sided board clears, you can still get it. So that isn't as big of a nerf as it would be if you just looked at numbers, right? Like if you just look at numbers, like, oh, we reduce powerful cards by this much, but in reality, you're reducing those cards, but people still have the options in those cards. So you're not reducing how well you can build your Warlock to what you want. You're just lowering the power level by like a little bit. So yeah, so I mean I agree. I think Warlocks are still very powerful right now, and the stats are going to continuously back it up. I wouldn't be surprised if they nerf Warlock again whenever they do another auto adjust, especially if they don't fix whatever it is that caused them to look at Rogue and say Rogues needed nerfing again.
Yeah, if your theory is correct that they're still using some of the older decks because they haven't been cycled out because people are still using them, that means some of the older, stronger Warlock decks, even the ones that now, are going to still be in their set for the next rotation, essentially, of nerfs. So then, then they probably will nerf it again. If so, we'll probably see at least a small nerf to it again.
Or maybe they'll figure it out, and I don't know.
Or maybe they'll figure out that everything's actually not wait a little bit longer on the stats, although I don't like that.
No, they can't wait longer. I think they're just messing up how they use the stats. Like
I just hope they if your theory is correct, I hope they just filter better. That's what I hope.
Yeah. They got to be able to do that, because you can't. We can't wait 3 more weeks. Longer.
Yeah. As people that play as streamers, especially for streamers, I think it's the waiting longer makes it less fun and less enjoyable, because you get to keep that meta even more so than other people. Like if you play once a week or whatever, you don't really notice these things, but people that watch this podcast or people that play every day, they notice the differences, and the meta gets staler quicker.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing that Blizzard's trying to fight with these rotations, right?
Exactly.
So why make it worse?
Exactly.
Yeah, so like right now, I feel like we're getting a lot of the downsides of this whole wild rotation attempt without like anything besides the very base level of upside that you get to see some wild cards come back. And you know, Blizzard will presumably do better as time goes on with this, but this is the beta testing period, right? We knew we were all getting ourselves into whenever Blizzard announced such a big change.
Well, big changes like these, if done properly, can be very exciting and very good for the game. It's that you need a streamlined process, essentially, and it's going a little slower than I was hoping for, but it is improvement from the past. I think it is improvement that they're trying to do something new. They're trying to keep it fresh. They're trying to at least put intentions that Arena does matter to them. So that is a good thing.
Yeah. So you were talking to me before the stream started about your schedule and what you've been doing these last little bit. So why don't you tell our listeners a bit about how I guess the meta or the patch or whatever has been affecting you.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know, I stream on Twitch. I stream almost every day, but this last 2 weeks, I essentially just unplugged myself from Twitch. I really didn't have any desire to really play Hearthstone, as well as I had some stuff to do in real life, but like it was just one of those things where it kind of worked out that I needed to do some stuff in real life, and I had no desire to play Hearthstone. So it kind of just worked out that I just kind of unplugged myself, didn't really do anything Hearthstone related. And it kind of was being fed up with the rogue meta, because all the rogues were essentially, all the rogues were just all over the place. And then they finally got to, I gave them a week to do it. They took a little longer than a week to get to nerfing the rogue, and then Warlock became dominant. And part of the nerfs that they had for the first set of nerfs didn't address some of the cards that I thought were problematic, because there are some
like
cards
which cards
that were, like Henge Clan,
Oh yeah,
the 2-1,
yeah.
the
They didn't
and then
move
deep
Henchclan
into
at
that,
all.
they didn't move Crusader,
Yeah, they didn't move
and
Crusader either.
Scribe was barely moved, I
Scribe was
think,
moved
and
half a bucket.
yeah. So there was a lot of cards that it just didn't seem like they that were problematic, or at least under bucketed quite easily, that should be moved up at least one bucket, like without like any hard decision being
Mm-hmm.
made. And it was one of those things where it was like, the only reason those picks were hard was because they were both misbucketed if I ever had those picks together. So like I'd only have difficult decisions because the cards were both misbucketed down low. Otherwise, it was just an easy pick every time I saw it. So it has to do with their philosophy of basically making going off of the average players' picks, I guess, pick rates, and going off of pick rates in general. So it might make it so like I don't have a huge issue with it because they're trying to balance it for the average player. They just have to realize that for people that like watch this podcast or people like us that play a lot or that understand the deeper level of the game, that it makes it a little less enjoyable for us, especially when you see these misbucketed cards
Yeah.
over and over and over again, and you're like, why don't you just fix this?
Yeah, because this is not gonna, like, if we're talking about the 8-1 meta, which we're in quite frequently, that's not gonna bother the average player. The average player is gonna
Yeah,
get there like once every now and then, and just like whatever they see, right? Like it's never gonna get
yeah,
repetitive. But for us, it's just like, more scribes, more Hogsteeds. People are like, oh, you can't play 3-2s anymore. Why? Because of Hogsteeds. Well, if
yeah,
Hogsteed was like bucketed correctly, then 3-2s are fine again, right? Like that's how much it's shifting the meta. That there are streamers out there, and I think Shady's on this thing as well, which is that that 3-2s are significantly worse than 2-3s
worse
right
than two
now,
threes. Yeah,
just because of Hogsteed, and not because Hogsteed exists in the meta, but because Hogsteed is everywhere in the meta because it is misbucketed. And
yep,
not even necessarily, and if Blizzard is to be believed, which is that Hogsteed is actually picked just as frequently in this like bottom of the fourth bucket or top of the fifth, or I forget where they put Hogsteed, as all the
yeah.
other cards in the bucket, then that means that if you're like 2-2, you don't have this problem. Your 3-2s are functioning normally. But once you're like 8-1, your 3-2s are no longer functioning as they should.
So what I think is happening, part of the reason why they're not picked as much is because of the thing I was saying, where because they have multiple cards misbucketed too low,
Hmm.
it's not they're not getting enough pick rates even by the good players that they move up the buckets because they both are misbucketed.
Right.
So they're kind of lowering the amount of obvious picks on those cards that should be there.
Yeah. I mean, if you bucket every card of the same power level into bucket 5, and those cards all happen to be the most OP cards in the game, they're still
Exactly.
going to be picked the same percentage of time as
So
if
they're
you'd
not going to
actually
move up
bucketed
buckets.
everything correctly. Yeah.
Yep. So they won't ever move up a bucket. So that's why by having multiple misbucketed cards in the same bucket, it's even going to be harder for them to move out of that bucket.
Yeah, no, that's true. And if you have enough misbucketed and you hit a critical mass, then they're just actually never going to move out because your stats are
Exactly.
like literally that math is never going to work out that way because that's how the statistics are going to work. Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's just so many problems with how they're doing this. But one thing I do want to point out is I think I finally got like this definitive confirmation now of how micro adjust work, not from Blizzard itself, but because the adjustment here was so stark that I think it's impossible for it to be for any other reason. So normally, I'll explain this. So normally we conceive of micro adjusts as like, let's say Warlocks are too powerful. Then their number 1 bucket cards gets reduced by like 10%. Their number 2 bucket cards get reduced by 5%. It's made up for by like 4th bucket and 5th bucket cards or whatever, right? Like 6th bucket, 7th bucket, maybe even. And you overall have a lower value. That's how it should work, right? Because if your buckets are correctly valuing cards, then you just lower your buckets, and it's a nice system that works together with the buckets. But there's always been this theory out there, and I don't take credit for this theory at all. It's just a theory that I haven't really seen like direct evidence for. But it turns out it's right, I think, now that I've been looking at the stats. And that's the theory that micro adjusts not only literally have nothing to do with buckets, but micro adjust assume that buckets are wrong and are actually trying to fix buckets. So if Blizzard actually believed they're bucketing things correctly by like win rates, which is not even their goal, so they shouldn't believe that, they would let micro adjust work in the way that we discussed it
Yeah.
previously. But if they think, and this is the reality, which is that they're bucketing based on the whims of average players who are objectively wrong very frequently, then micro adjust would not be a very good balancing factor if it did anything with buckets whatsoever. Like, if it interacted with buckets at all, that would be not balancing, right? Of how good a class is. Ixar in Arena HS, like very, I don't know if it's famously, but I thought that was a pretty stark thing. Literally said buckets don't matter for balance. That's wrong. That's just flat out wrong, or that's like a really ridiculously limited like understanding of what balancing means. But I think what he means is that that's how Blizzard approaches buckets, as having nothing to do with balancing. It's just to make people think they have choices, people not being us, people being average players, people who play like one arena a week or a month or whatever. Instead, micro adjust is the tool that Blizzard uses to bring balance into the arena. So as a result of this, once Warlock got nerfed, a top bucket card like Abyssal Enforcer, its offering rates dropped very significantly. But also, in an exactly parallel format, a highly misbucketed card in the bottom of the fourth bucket, which would not be affected by how we normally think of micro adjust as happening, also got slammed, and that's Evil Genius. I think at this point we all recognize Evil Genius is a top tier card. That's a card that we missed in our initial, just like most people, I think, we missed it in our initial tier list preview, and we have since adjusted it to be like a 140 something, which is actually pretty high in Warlock. But Blizzard still has in the bottom of the fourth bucket. It's never going to rise too much beyond that because it involves sacrificing your own creatures, which average players don't like to do. So it's just never going to move when it comes to buckets. Not significantly anyway. Not unless it's like super pervasive and broken constructed decks that, they think they can make work in Arena. But just like Abyssal Enforcer went from like 13% seen to like 9%, the same exact thing happened with Evil Genius. And those are two of the top performing cards by win rate on HS Replay for Warlock. So what micro adjusts are actually doing is not reducing offering rates of buckets, but reducing offering rates of individual cards, not based on buckets, but based on win rates that they see.
Yeah. That does seem to be the case. Well, I mean, we'll still have to track more, I think, but like that seems that's what they're doing because they clearly realize that they can't trust the average player in terms of what's good and bad.
In terms of what's balanced.
In terms of what's balanced, and so they go ahead and balance it in another way, essentially.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to go overall buckets and overall like sets or whatever.
So the balancing now work like the effects of this is that one, high performers, good players, still have no choice whenever Evil Genius pops up. Whenever any misbucketed cards pop up, we're still gonna all take the misbucketed card, right? But that'll just happen less frequently. So our edge is smaller. And also our ability to craft decks is actually larger because these things will pop up less frequently. An average player will preserve their design philosophy of always having a choice in every single pick, even though picks like choices probably matter less to average players and are likely more overwhelming than good to have all these choices before you start the game. But that's just my theory. Also, well, the issue you were talking about before with misbucketed cards, which is that you just see Hawksteeds everywhere at top, right? You see Scribes everywhere at top. It makes it like a less fun environment. If this is actually the micro adjust philosophy, then that should have an impact on the top level, where the top level should get a little better, right? Like if you're getting offered Hawksteeds less frequently, you're going to see Hawksteeds less frequently, even if all the good players, all the players who are 8-1 always pick it whenever it gets offered.
Yeah, see, the problem with that, though, is those are neutral cards.
Mm-hmm.
And since they're neutral cards, they won't class balance anything by lowering their offer rates that much. Because
that's fair. Yeah.
So
okay, so it does not solve the problem.
No. So it's one of those things where unless a card is disproportionately better in one class, a neutral card is disproportionately better in one class than another, they'll never micro adjust those cards to the point where they'll only micro adjust it if there's a huge uproar that like you're seeing way too many of these.
Or I don't know if they're doing this. I don't know if they're doing this, but
I'm
it
guessing.
could be possible that if you're a
Okay.
warlock, you just see less hogsteeds, and if you're a warrior, you get offered a lot of hogsteeds.
So
Because
the better misbucketed cards they're just gonna offer in the bad classes and like
because
they
it's
could do
going to be
that.
about win rates, right? So the
They
hogsteed
could do
win rates
that,
are
yeah.
very high in warrior
But do you really think that they're having individual micro adjust
for
for
each
each
class neutral.
class as well
Well,
for
they
each individual neutral card?
they definitely can't do that in bucketing. We know they literally can't because they told us they can't.
Yeah, so like I don't
So
think that's actually gonna that could solve some of the issues you're talking about, but I don't think they can do that. Like they're not
yeah,
doing that.
okay.
So
I mean,
they're gonna just continue rebucketing. So you have to look at the class cards that are in the class.
yeah. So okay, so it solves class card problem, or it doesn't solve it. It never solves it, right? But it makes it like
No.
more livable for good
Yes.
players. While it
So
questionably
when you
does anything for
yeah, exactly.
neutral cards. Interesting. I'm sure we can actually find the answer to that if we just like dig through HS replay and see what's happened to Hogsteed, for example.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet you could. It'll take a lot of man
yeah,
hours probably
it'll
to
take
figure it
man
out.
hours. If any of our listeners wants to do this and post it on the Arena HS subreddit or the Gritting Goat subreddit, you are totally welcome to. We would really appreciate it. I'm not going to spend my time trying to figure this out from Blizzard because
No.
Blizzard does have a lot better communication now, but they've still told us like
Yeah,
diddly squat about like micro adjusts besides like the big picture, right? Which ones got nerfed, which ones got buffed, which ones they didn't touch.
I will say I am happier that they are at least communicating with us a little bit better, and that they not with this most recent nerf, but with the previous nerf where they actually released what cards moved what buckets and stuff. I actually am very happy that they're doing these type of things
Yeah.
now that they were kind of just ignoring in the past. So I feel like they're going in the right direction. It's just a little slower than I was hoping for, but it's in the right direction, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. We'll see when they get more like when they get even like more ideas or implement more of their ideas that already exist to see how they're getting this balancing thing. But the micro just being more specific, and as we saw what happened with Evil Genius, does make things a bit better compared to how we thought things were working before. It does not solve the problem, as we mentioned with neutrals, unless that's also what they're doing with neutrals, which
Which I don't think so.
yeah, that like now that you bring it up, I'm like that does kind of like seem like a stretch for what
That's a
Blizzard's
lot
doing.
more work, and it
Yeah,
seems like they're not going to put that effort in.
yeah, but you know the stats are out there. If people wanna take a look and report back, we'll get to the bottom of this. For the other issue that I see with them doing this kind of balancing is that it doesn't just mean that the less powerful cards are going to be seen less frequently to move class balance around. It means the less interesting cards are going to be seen less frequently. Like the less complicated cards, the less cards, like literally the less cards that good players think and know how to use better than bad players are going to be in the arena. Like with
Yeah.
this way of balancing, they have they have as a side effect made arena dumber. Like, and it's a 100% effect. This is not an avoidable, like this is not a side effect that's questionable whether it happens or not. It's literally in the design of their system. Is that any card that average players cannot see the value of and so therefore don't pick, but does actually perform very well because they're like good cards and they're like, you know, they can be used in interesting ways. They get moved down buckets and then they get reduced offering rates. So it it has that effect. While on the other hand, the Mimi cards and the RNG cards and the cards that you know people do take higher than their actual value worth, they're going to be seen more in the arena. So it's a thumb on the scale of more RNG craziness and a thumb against more depth and thought and like you know deck creation and like understanding of mechanics and things like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like examples of this what you're saying, and I think you're right, but I can't think of like a specific example of that leads towards that because like cards like like Abyssal Enforcer are just naturally being nerfed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which
Yeah,
I
Abyssals
think,
aren't going to be the thing because they're high bucket
yeah.
and they're also high performing. So we're
So
looking for cards that are low bucket
low
but high
bucket but high
performing.
performing. Yeah. So cards like, I guess like Shell Fighter, that back in the previous set, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever stuff
Yeah.
like that would be the issues. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay.
Yeah. Also, stuff like double-sided board clears, which I hate, but they do take like certain like deck creation, right? They diversify the meta. They do a lot of positive things, even though it's not really my style. That those are going to suffer. Anything that sacrifices your own thing, anything that gives an opponent a thing, anything that like what do you call that card? Banshee, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah, Banshee
It's not like I
or
think it's a
Soldier of
well-designed
Fortune.
card, right? Soldier of Fortune.
Fortune,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're cards that good players use better. Like even if they're whether they're designed well or not, it's a whole separate story. I don't think that's
That's
exactly
not solved by this issue, by
exactly.
bucketing and
Yeah,
stuff,
because
so
I
it's
think
not
Banshee
as
is a
bad.
terribly designed card, but still, it's a more complicated card than I think people give it credit for.
Yeah, I
So,
can't tell you how many people say it's bad, or how many
oh,
people don't understand that it, like, when you're trying to, on the defending side specifically, where
mm-hmm.
they like will just leave it up, and I'm like, that's not how you're gonna win this game. I'm gonna hit you in the face. Um, or people that over trade with it over and over and over again, when they should just be hitting the face,
Right.
because they don't understand what that card is doing, why it's putting pressure on your opponents.
Yeah, yeah. It changes a lot of aspects of the game.
Yeah.
I think the bigger problem with that card really is just that no other card changes the game in that way. And so it's kind of an island by itself and it changes too much of the game and you're just like especially if you're not like a really thoughtful player, right? You're just like what like I'm going to take it easy way even if I'm not 100% right in this understanding. It's going to be more worth it for me like rather than like having to spend all this mental energy like rethinking how I play the entire game, right? I'm just not going to opt into that. I'm going to
Yeah.
instead either always remove it or I'm going to just always leave it alone and then like let that be that.
Yeah, it's like when you kind of tell people when they're first starting out how to play a game, you kind of say pick a couple classes to learn and
Mm-hmm.
not learn everything, and
Yep.
just try to focus on the things that you can understand about those classes, and then broaden your spectrum essentially after.
Yeah, and these complicated cards, these cards with these weird effects on the meta, they're the ones that are going to be reduced in offering rates. Not
Yep.
whereas the cards that are super memey and super like loved by people, they're going to be all over the meta. I don't think it's necessarily a wrong decision by Blizzard when it comes to their overall thing. Just like I don't think
Yeah.
bucketing by
Pick
pick
rates.
rates rather than by win rates is like necessarily a wrong decision, but it
It's just,
certainly is bad for us and it's less fun
yeah,
for
it's
us.
it's not a bad decision for like an overall design from their perspective,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because it doesn't hurt the average player.
right.
It just makes
It
it less
helps the
interesting.
average player, if anything.
Yeah, exactly. It it makes it less interesting for the top tier players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, if you did it by what they should be bucketed in, or what top players think they should be bucketed in, that if average players knew that going forward, they might actually learn more, because
Yeah,
they would see cards that they never would have considered picking, and they'd be like, why is this in this bucket?
it's just a design
But
philosophy. Do you
that would
design down
also,
to the lowest common
yeah,
denominator, or do you design up
yeah.
to your
So
like top level?
it's one of those things where it's like, I can't say it's wrong. It just depends on what you're trying to go for who you're trying to target
Mm-hmm.
as your main audience.
Yeah, and this is Blizzard, like designing down to the lowest common denominator, which leaves us all kind of hanging a bit here, and well, at least I'm at least a little happier about our reality, knowing how micro adjusts work a little better now than we did
Yeah,
before.
and I think this last nerf is also another step in moving forward, getting a little bit closer to, because like I think when you have something at like 60% win rate and 40% win rate, there's something clearly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're getting to like 52 and 44. 44 is still kind of too low, but
Yeah.
52 is like totally fine. In terms of like not being super overpowered. Like if you have multiple classes where you're like, yeah, this could be the top. Maybe this could be the top. And I don't know which one of these are that much worse. Like I could play any of these classes and I don't feel bad about playing any of these classes. Then I think that's fine in terms of class balance.
Yep.
How you go about that class balance is a different thing.
Yep. Because the spread right now is less than 10%. And 10% is your bounds rate. Anything over a spread of 10% is like, did you even try? Like, if you did, you failed. Now we're in the, not a great job, but you get a passing grade. And with our goal,
you have 5 classes within 3% of each other.
Yeah.
So like that at least 5 playable classes that are like, and one of the less playable ones, Druid, which is right below that, is I still think pretty good for the above average player. It's just harder to play for the average player.
Yeah. And I think Warrior's probably in that boat too, to a much lesser degree, but still not as bad as the stats suggest. So I don't see it as being
for the above average player.
Yeah, for the good players.
Yeah. I think it's harder to play for the average player.
Yeah. Because Warrior's just kind of a tough class to play when it's not broken. So
yeah.
It's also going through
some people are happy about because of how broken it was in the previous expansion. So some people are happy to see it burn back down to the ground.
I mean, that's fair. And there's also a huge adjustment, right? If you like playing Warrior before, you're probably not going to like playing Warrior now. And if you like playing Warrior now, you probably haven't like developed or honed your skills here yet, because there's been like a year in which Warriors were played control. So yeah. It's not that bad right now in terms of just, at least from what I've seen so far, when it comes to the overall class balance. When it comes to the buckets, it's still very, very annoying. I still see like way too much of these like blatantly underbucketed cards, especially the neutrals, and I don't know. I guess there's going to be trade-offs, right? Like, there's going to be trade-offs, and here the trade-off is people like us get a worse experience, average players get a better experience. That's the trade-off Blizzard's making.
Yeah, and I think they're okay with that. So as long as the average player are actually having fun, like if I can hear from the people, maybe not necessarily my chat, but like if I hear people like when I go into large streams and there's enough of them that like are enjoying the game, then I'm okay with it. That like I'll have a little less fun to have them have more fun, because it's giving more satisfaction to them. So that's fine.
If Blizzard literally can like release some stats, that's like the percentage of arena players has like doubled out of our total player base since we made this change, because people like wild rotations. I would be like, all right, well, mission accomplished.
That's working.
Mission accomplished. Clearly the right way to go. We'll just suffer what we have to suffer here, right? Like you can't. It's their philosophy, their thing. But if
play rates are up, like you said, then I think it's a good thing for the game, so it doesn't. Right. Like I think Arena has been slowly dying beforehand. I think Hearthstone in general.
It's not just Arena.
Slowly dying, yeah. And it's just that our player base. I think the Arena player base is really dedicated. I think in terms, not all of them all play, but I think a lot of people like. You see how many people love this podcast. Now, not all of them play every day, but they really enjoy the Arena content and the what they get out of Arena. And you can see how active Arena HS subreddit is. For the percentage wise compared to how large the competitive HS subreddit is, right?
It definitely is, and it's a good thing, right? Because we need to kind of have a turf, talk about it, and with Blizzard, who understands very little about what we want here, like you got to have active participation and communication, and otherwise, it's not even like they're going to like screw us over. They're just not even going to know that they're screwing us over or not or anything. So at least now, like, if they're doing something and they don't know beforehand, they'll know afterwards, like immediately, like what parts are being heard, what the effects are, like, that's at least some of that. None of us are Blizzard devs. We can't really change what they're doing. But yeah, the big question really, this is the best we can do. But the big thing is, are there more people in the arena? I don't
I
like.
don't know.
Yeah,
I
right. Like
don't
I can't
know.
tell. I can't like. I didn't get that like impression. It's definitely not noticeable to a like person who just like cares about Hearthstone.
Like
But
obviously when it was first released, like the first weekend, it's you obviously noticed a big spike. I
yeah,
think,
but
but like,
that's the expansion
but that's
release.
the expansion
Yeah,
release, right?
that always
Everyone
happens.
spikes. Yeah. Yeah, you can look at stats throughout Hearthstone history. Every expansion release, there's a spike.
Yeah,
So it's whether people stuck around in the arena afterwards.
yeah. You gotta compare the stats the right way, right? You gotta look
Yeah,
at percentage
exactly.
of Hearthstone players playing arena versus percentage of Hearthstones playing arena. Like I don't know, let's say in last year in the Witchwood, right? The Witchwood turn from last year, and then you got to see what the
Exactly.
retention rate is as the weeks go on. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, I do. The thing I'm really looking forward to now is the next rebucketing because that's got to be happening pretty soon. They haven't rebucketed since like 1 week ish, a little after 1 week into the release,
You
and
think so?
they haven't rebucketed Rogue at all. Like right?
I'm not sure they're going to though. Now that they made these nerfs without
Seriously?
rebucketing,
Oh my
yeah,
god.
I'm nervous that they're not going to for a little while because
Well, if they're not going to for a while, they're not going to. Period. Until the rotation, right? We have 4 weeks until the rotation.
no, I
That's
think they'll still do at least one more, but I just don't. I don't know if they're gonna do it soon. Is what I'm saying.
oh. I thought
Like,
this would be coming like this next coming
because
week.
last time they rebucketed, right? They did it the same day they did the nerfs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So they just did nerfs, but no rebucketing. So I don't know if they're gonna do a rebucketing, right?
Hmm.
Like at least for a little while until they want to do another set of nerfs.
Well,
Maybe.
rebucketing probably involves a lot more human input than these auto adjusts
I
that they've
guess we.
automated. And I feel
Yeah.
like no one was on the ball and they just kind of forgot about the arena with worlds going on until like the middle of like last week when
I guess we. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say also we kind of pointed out that they don't they don't think the nerfs and buckets are connected anyways.
right.
So I guess you could be right that they're just gonna do it. That's pretty soon anyways. Like with it because they don't think there's connected at all.
Right. They're treating them too
I
separately.
guess they're treating them separately. So
Yeah.
I guess you might be right.
I hope I'm right because I do want another rebucketing, and what I'm interested in seeing is what they move now because they have like a month of data
Oh
at this
yeah,
point in terms of pick
yeah. They
rates,
have enough data,
behaviors.
definitely.
So, like, if stuff like Scribe still ain't moving, then it's just like, well, what are you gonna do? People are dumb.
I
Like,
think it just has. They might have just too high of a threshold to move up, because like you set a threshold that you need
yeah,
for certain picks, and if you have multiple cards misbucketed in the same thing, it's going to be harder to move up. But once they move up a bucket, it's a lot easier, right? But they did jump Conjurer's Calling from 6 to 1.
that was definitely like a human thing where
Yeah,
where
where
someone
they saw it was busted, and they were like, "We shouldn't move this
yeah, and we should not move it from the sixth bucket to the fifth
to the
bucket,
fifth one."
which
Yeah,
increases its offering rate and is still an auto pick.
exactly. I'm so happy they didn't do
That
that. I
was
think that's one of the biggest things. They misbucketed it so heavily, but then at least they when they fixed it, they didn't make us suffer through even more Conjurer's Callings while they slowly moved it up to 1.
it showed a
So
level of understanding of how their own system works, which I
yes,
usually don't
exactly.
see. So it's definitely giving me more faith in the in how balancing is going to work in the future.
Yeah, they
Um,
were at least able to admit that they were wrong, so that's a good thing.
yeah, yeah,
I'm okay with people being wrong. They're like it happens, right? Like everyone makes mistakes. It's just as long as you can admit them and fix them, I'm okay with
yeah.
that.
Fix them quick.
Quickly, quickly,
Fix them
quickly.
quickly. Not this 3 week thing. That's uh, uh, the last 3 weeks were seriously one of them. Was like you were like, oh, I just decided not to play when I had other stuff come up. Whereas normally you'd probably like power through it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
would usually at least try to find a way to get in a couple runs.
yeah. And meanwhile, I'm here streaming like Merps is out for now, and I'm like, well, I guess I have to stream. But this last like
Yeah,
week and a half before the Friday stream, I was literally drag. I was really. It was very hard to stream and to continuously like have fun with it when I'm just like, this meta is pretty busted. I know it's gonna change. I'm not learning anything from this. Like, all I'm learning is like how this is a bad meta, and I know why it's a bad meta. Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm not going for the leaderboard or anything. Ugh.
Yeah, I think that's also another issue that they have is for at least for top players is that I don't really care about the leaderboard.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve out of Hearthstone. I got to Infinite, I got to be a good player, and now there's not much left for me to do except for leaderboard, but I don't want to be leaderboarding. So like it's one of those things where it's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing now except for just playing and having fun with playing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. I'm just playing and having fun with playing and trying to like figure stuff out whenever they change some stuff up, and otherwise just playing. And normally it's fun to play. I've been doing this like and streaming this for like 5 years
yep.
now, and I can count on like 3 fingers, literally just 3 times, that I have ever not wanted to stream and play Hearthstone Arena on my 2 to 3 times a week schedule that I do it on. And
Yeah.
usually 2 of these other times was, well, no, one time was because of the event, the Taverns of Time event that went on too long. One of them was
Yeah.
sometime in like the end of the Ungoro meta when just things were like so unbalanced. And this is the third time.
Yeah, so the Towers of Time event, you brought it up. Them moving the giant in that was
Yeah.
kind of what I was afraid was going to
Exactly.
happen.
Yeah.
Conjurer's Calling. But they I think they learned from their mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So
And we were warning them the entire time. Like, once I saw Conjurer's Calling,
Yeah.
like everybody, not just me.
Yeah,
like people were
I
like,
think everyone
don't
knew it was gonna
don't
be
let
good.
this happen again. This is in the 6 bucket. This is gonna move up a lot. Danger zone. And they listened.
Yeah, they listened. That it's a progress.
Okay. So let's see. I think we covered these latest changes pretty well.
Yeah, I think so.
I want to do a little thing on Druid and Warrior, right? Where you know
Okay.
they're better than what their win rates say. That was always true
Yep.
even before this update. But in the update, I don't know. It didn't seem like Druid got buffed too much, but it does seem like, at least among people who care a lot about this. I'm reading stuff on Arena HS and stuff. It seems like people are giving Druid more of a shot now than they used to, especially Token Druid. And
I feel like Token Druid is viable. I don't know.
it's super
From what I've
viable.
watched,
My
right?
my average is above 10 wins per run with Druid in this entire meta. Almost all of my runs being played before this buff.
Yeah, so I've only played one Druid, and I forced myself to go Token,
Mhm.
and it did not go well because I didn't get offered a single Mark, Power, or Savage Roar.
What? How is that even possible?
I don't know, but it went 0-3 because I forced myself to take like acorns and stuff,
Yeah.
and like I had all the token tools except without any of the buffs or the finishers.
How is that like, even possible?
I went through 30 cards, forcing myself to do it, and then it was just like that. It was kind of funny too, because like I just finished playing. I think it was just finished playing, or the next deck after was the most broken Warlock deck where I had 4 Abyssals and Forces. So like I think I just like used all my luck in one run and then just lost it all in the next. So it was just like the most polarizing results you could see. It was hilarious.
Yeah, we have like whenever I've never gotten the situation where I couldn't get at least 3 buff alls in my deck.
Yeah.
Like it's never a problem.
Tokenish, yeah. Even back to the previous expansion, I've been playing Token Druid pretty consistently and had really good results for the most part, playing a very aggressive Token Druid style.
Right.
Where I would just take every power of the wild offered, and now with Mark coming back and Savage Roars is still being a thing, I was like, oh, this will just get better. And then this happened. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I think it's a little slower now for the tokens because of a Force Aid.
Because Force Aid,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Which is underbucketed heavily, and you need to take it if you get it if you're doing a token.
But I think that's okay because there's a lot less AOE as well than the previous expansion, I think.
Yeah. No, it's true. But between Scribe and Forest Aid, I like to
Yeah,
try to take advantage of that and go a bit slower and a bit more like mid-rangey, but to still have the focus be on Buffall.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so like I played a Druid run after the buffs, and I'm guessing I just got really unlucky because it really did not feel like they buffed the offering rates on Druid all that much, if at all.
Yeah,
And maybe I got a bit lucky on the on my prior runs that got such high win rates because the drafts all felt pretty good for those, and even the ones that busted, I ended up doing well because it's just like a mid range deck at that point, right?
yeah.
Like you don't
Yeah,
have
you
to
didn't
take
force
advantage.
it out of its way to go
Right.
into one
I wasn't
direction
taking
like that.
acorns for the sake of acorns. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. You when your deck didn't go how you wanted, you adjusted and made actual changes. I just forced mine, so it didn't go so well.
so Druid Warrior all pretty viable, and as we brought up before, you were saying like it's not as unbalanced right now for good
No.
players as the HS replay stats would indicate. And I think that's definitely true. The balance
Yep.
is pretty good from my from what I played after the patch. Not to say there shouldn't be another balance patch at some point, but if there isn't, I would not be disappointed for in terms of the micro adjusts. In terms of the buckets, I want to see how they're moving buckets. It's more to like confirm what they're trying to do with buckets than anything, because
really
it's not like they're gonna fix it.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna fix it anytime soon. So like, because like I don't think they think there's a problem.
Right, exactly.
So like the like fixing it would indicate a problem. This is
right.
not one of the things they think is a problem. So like I don't think there's any change gonna happen that way. But I think I feel like we should see at least one or two more either micro adjustments slash rebucketings throughout.
Yeah.
So like at least one or two more of those things before the next set hits.
Okay.
I think that's what I'd hope for.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's what I thought. That's what I thought before we even were in this expansion. Once I heard wild rotation, but I also thought that the schedule would be like each step in the schedule. I thought would take less than half the time than it did.
Yeah, they set really lofty goals for themselves that they exclaimed to the public. They said every 3 days. They said every 3 days.
Starting out every 3 days, then getting a bit longer.
And then I was like, I'm gonna give them a week. They still took longer than that, and I was like, a little frustrating after that. But it's one of those things where like they really should have just not have said any. Like they should have said. I think they should have said like a week or 2 weeks. And kept like the goals reasonable. I don't know if unless they were actually gonna spend the time.
Yeah, I think 3 days. Like I think that's not difficult to do at all for a preliminary one. They just didn't do it
for at least how they say like it's just pressing a button for like rebucket. Like if it's that easy, then yeah. But like looking at the data and stuff obviously takes man hours and power, right? So like if you want to like manually go fix things, like micro adjusting things. But,
and what are they like? Let's say you're the balance team. What are you doing when the game is released? Like constructed changes never happen in like the first few weeks, right? They always, because constructed's very heavily tested.
Yeah, but there's always things that they miss, right? Like there's always something you miss. There's always like some combo or something that I'm betting there's always something that they
yeah, but I never seen a change. When's the last time they changed anything in the game in like the first like week or two or even like 3?
Maybe was Shutterwalk the thing they changed right away? I don't know.
Oh no, that's true. That's true. But that was more of a like playability issue in that it just like froze games than that was a balance issue, right?
Balance issue. I don't know. I don't know enough about Constructed. Like if I watch Constructed, I usually just watch to see like top level play. Like I don't actually follow the Constructed scene in depth.
Right.
So
in like once the game is released, I don't know what the balance team and these people who are normally doing data.
Do they just go on to the next set?
Yeah,
and start
right.
Balancing
in which case, you probably should prioritize arena and actually getting arena balance before you move on to the next set. Right? Like that's
at least for like the first week, right?
Yeah, for the first week, so that you get your like you fixed your mistakes that you're guaranteed to make.
Or at least have one person. Person focused on that.
Yeah, like we don't need the whole team of like however many people is touching the arena, like working on it. But
you just need one competent person.
Yeah. Or if you do have 3 people that need to touch on it because they're each specializing in different things,
in different areas.
Yeah, they don't need to spend their whole day like doing arena to like get the product done before 3 days are up.
For at least for rebucketing and the micro adjustment might take a little bit longer just because
you need the
to,
data,
specifically analyze what's going on. But the rebucketing thing, based on the way they're doing rebucketing, it should just be simple filtering, like by percentage, right? Like that's how they're doing rebucketing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how they're doing micro adjust too. It's just win rates. So
I
don't think anything is all that difficult. I do think like for the people who are like, oh yeah, it's just like pressing a button and you're done. Obviously, there's someone who has to look at like what happens after you press the button, right? Yeah, like they're getting the answers from the button, but someone has to make sure like sensible things come out. Right, exactly.
You also got to. I would say that up front, these things would be issues, right? Like the setting up the filtering system and the micro adjustment and stuff would have been a big issue, but they already have it in place, right? So it should theoretically be simple now,
right? And they've done it so many times.
Everything properly, right?
Yeah. No, and it's not. It's clearly not simple for them, and it's clearly not fast. Like, I don't think they're sitting there being like, should we push the button now? No, let's not push the button. It's going to be something like, oh, we push the button. Does this look good? I don't know. Does this look good? That looks kind of weird. I don't know. Does this look good? What's wrong with the button? No, we probably need to push the button again. Okay, does this look good now? Like, it's probably like that kind of stuff happening. It would be very sad if it's literally just them not pushing the button. Like...
I do want to reiterate though, like we're not just trying to bash Blizzard. We do like that they're moving in the right direction. I think, right? Like you can at least agree with that. They're putting more emphasis on arena. They're putting a little more focus on arena, and we are appreciative of that. It's just we want a little more upfront and a little bit speedier, right?
And just a little humility in like understanding your limitations and like setting correct like expectations or like not biting off more than you can chew. I don't know.
This was a lofty goal. We all realized.
Everybody thought it was a lofty goal. Like
we all knew this was going to be not an easy thing to do, right? Like bucketing every single card right away, and especially when they don't have a whole team just focused on it all at once, right?
Yeah, and especially with their history, right? It's not even like, oh, we've done it a couple times, now we're just going to do it twice as fast. They're like, no, we're going to do it twice as fast, and we're going to do something we've never done before.
Exactly.
Like,
we realized it was a tough order, but just set more reasonable goals, and we won't be disappointed, I guess.
I'd still be disappointed if they took 3 weeks to freaking out. That's not true, but... I don't know what they could say or can't say. That's why I
gave them a week. Like that's why I personally gave them a week, and when they didn't hit that, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah.
They didn't hit my expectation of what they should have done.
Yeah. So I don't know. Even
after they set a higher goal than that.
I just know that they like something that like they're gonna get. I don't know. On the other hand, I keep saying they're gonna get better at it, and they like have, but it's like very small steps compared to the speed in which I want them to get better at it. Like comparing to where they were, let's say, like 6 months before.
They are improving.
They are improving.
It's just slow.
Yeah,
it's slow improvement.
It's slow improvement.
It's one of those things because you're playing or you're focused on it, and you do your own tier list. You do all these your own analysis. You just expect them to do better.
Mm-hmm.
While the average player probably doesn't care too much, right?
And so their priorities aren't there. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here and I'm like, look, the percentage of times I spend
hypercritical, right?
Yeah. Like if I'm take away the time I'm actually playing the arena, the percent of times I'm working on the algorithm or tier list for Hearthstone, that should be at least equaled on the Blizzard side, right? When they have more people and much more resources and are getting paid, like more than
you would think.
you would think, right? Because I'm just kind of doing this. We earn like around federal minimum wage, which is like $7.50 an hour on average for each hour of work me and Rubs do. And these are all like essentially overtime hours. So you figure Blizzard would care enough about Arena to at least do that. And if they like did that, then it's weird to me that they can't do better and faster than what's been happening. So I don't know. But okay, let's move on from that because we're just speculating on what Blizzard can do and can't do,
Yeah,
and what they are doing and what they
I
aren't
don't.
doing. We don't really know.
There's no like actual insight. Like none of us have actually like talked to. Like I
Yeah,
haven't actually talked to anyone in Blizzard. It's just from what we see. Yeah.
yeah.
So
It's
on to the next topic.
on to the next topic. Let's talk about the next rotation. Just because we normally start talking about whenever a new set comes out, like about at the 1 month mark before it comes out. So
Yeah.
yeah, we could probably briefly talk about just what do you want to see in the next rotation? Not in terms of how they'll make it great or whatever, but just what kind of cards you want to come back. Because that's the exciting thing, right? For wild rotations, that these like cards that you haven't seen in a while that you may have like good plays or like good memories of, or like exciting things happen with, or just you think they're good designs that they should be in basic or core or whatever. What cards are you excited to see come back in the next rotation? And keep in mind,
Yeah.
we don't know which sets are
Which
coming
sets?
back, so this just applies
Yeah.
to all the sets that are currently not in the arena right now.
Do you first? I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you think that they're gonna just flip the sets essentially, and just like all the sets we have right now, they're just gonna do the opposite, basically, plus the new expansion? Or do you think
Uh,
they're
I don't know. I think they will not bring back anything from last year.
okay?
And I think that they will, obviously keep the current expansion.
All right.
Outside of that, I don't know if they're going to completely flip everything or just flip some. My vote's on
Okay.
completely flip them.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So one of the cards that I'm looking forward to be coming back is Pit Fighter, right?
Mm,
The classic staple. When it was printed, it was one of those cards that was like, man, we haven't seen a card like this before. It's well statted 5-drop, and it dominates all these 5/5s that are on 5, or at the time, or like all these vanilla cards. It was one of the when you think of 3 manas, you think of Spider Tank,
yep.
and when you think of 5 mana, you think of Pit Fighter,
Yep.
and that's one of those cards where it feels like a classic staple arena card. Like you see it and you're like arena.
Yeah,
And I'm looking forward to that.
and they've printed so many more spider tanks since Spider
Yeah,
Tank, and they have
but
not
they haven't
printed
printed.
a neutral pit fighter.
They've printed like 4 mana 5/6, but then they had a downside. But they
Yeah.
haven't printed many or
No
any
5 mana 5/6.
5/6.
Nothing. And it's been a lot of sets to come out since Pit Fighters from TGT, right? So that's
Yeah,
yeah. It's been a long time and they have not done it. I think it's behind their like constructed philosophy, and also probably their philosophy of how limited should be played, where Curvestone goes to turn 4, and then it's at least like they're at least going to force you into weird Curvestone, even if you want to continue to play Curvestone. Like they're just not going to
yeah.
give you your 6/5 for 5 or your 5/6 for 5 on the neutral slot. So bringing this back would definitely make. I think it puts a big impact on the meta if it's bucketed correctly or under bucketed.
Yeah, because like when you think of like 3, 4, 5, I think Spider Tank, Yeti, Pit Fighter. Those are
Yep.
like that's what I think of like stats wise. What I should be getting for each of my stats.
Yep.
Like what I want for my stats each turn.
Yep.
So
And they're very much open to the 3 mana horn, right? Like we've
yeah,
been
they've
having
definitely
3
done a ton of
4s.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it will be definitely very interesting to get Pit Fighter back. For me, Kraken is the one I want to see back.
Yeah.
Because that was also TGT, and that was a game changer when it came out. I have so many good memories with Kraken. Like at the time, there was nothing else. You know how like Shovel Fist is in today's
we
meta?
were worried it was too slow. I think some people were worried it was too slow back at the time when it
Yeah,
was first released, right?
yeah,
Because like games didn't usually go to 9, or like the 9 mana plays weren't relevant ever before that, really,
yep.
right? Like so like that was like one of the first like really relevant 9 mana drops that you would just like and you would consistently take. It was
Yep.
very powerful.
And so I wonder how powerful it would be in today's meta, because you're looking at it compared to
Yeah.
Shovel Fist, right? And Shovel Fist can deal 9 damage, but it's going to take a lot more damage if it's trying to deal like
And
any
it can't go
significant damage,
face.
and it can't go face. Kraken's 4 damage can go face, but 4 damage is a lot less than 9, even if you're limited to the board. But you don't have to take the damage.
You don't have to take the damage, so you can kill something that's like a 5/4. Where, well, if you did that with Shovel Fist, you take 5 damage on your Shovel Fist.
Yeah,
right?
I think overall Kraken would probably still be better by like a little bit, but maybe they're like the same power level, and it would just be interesting. And especially in today's meta, you don't really have an alternative to Shovel Fist. So
I think it'll depend on if there are more things like Furious Eden or things like that in the meta, where they'll have these 5/9 taunts or bog creepers or stuff like that in the meta. So it depends if those type of cards are still in the meta or not.
Right.
Because right now Shovel Fist just dominates those, so it makes those cards almost irrelevant if you in the meta. But if you don't have those things, those cards become way more impactful. So you take those type of cards, and then the 4 damage is less relevant as well.
Yeah.
It's still very good because you can trade like a small thing in and then use it, but
yeah,
you still have to be ahead on the board for that.
Yeah, and if they don't, these large taunts, I'm trying to think back. Were there other large taunts that have rotated out? Outside of the ones from the last 2 years? Right? Like, I think if they rotate back in something like, I don't know, Sleepy Dragon or whatever, it'll obviously have an impact. But I think the old sets didn't have large taunts, if I remember correctly. Like, Bog Creeper in old
large
gods.
Minions. Yeah, they had large minions, but they didn't give them taunt yet.
Yeah. Like that's why Bog Creeper was so impactful in old gods.
Yeah. And then they made like Primordial Drake and other things that
but God, you just reminded me they may bring Ungoro back. Oh, I really hope they don't bring Ungoro back.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they don't either. Things because yeah, I don't know.
Because they have Witchwood right now, right? Witchwood is still in, so they're presumably going to rotate Witchwood out, and then they probably feel comfortable bringing in some other, like, fairly recent.
Ungoro's probably one of the worst balanced. Like, they were really testing their limits with Ungoro.
It's
trying to say.
It's Ben Brode's swan song, right? So that was the overpowered set, the most overpowered set.
That's why it dominated the meta for so long. Like, even when the final expansion was released, Ungoro was still dominating those sets just because it was so much stronger than the other ones.
Okay, so we're both looking forward to TGT. That's what I've learned, which is widely considered like the worst thing ever printed by constructed players, at least.
Yeah, they hated Inspire. It was just not relevant in constructed at all. So they felt really like it did nothing for the game. I guess.
And I hated Joust because
Joust. Yeah.
It's not going to be
both of those. It's annoying.
Yeah, it's not going to be as bad now, just because they've now since then printed cards that are basically Joust, except you always win the Joust. So the power level wise, the Joust cards are just like worse versions of overpowered cards. But still, it's definitely not a very well designed mechanic. And yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and I do think TGT is going to come back because
that means cards like Auto Barber and stuff are coming back as well. Ooh.
Oh, was Auto Barber TGT?
I think so. Right?
Interesting. Yeah,
so
maybe.
We'll see what comes back. What sets they're gonna put in the next expansion with the next expansion.
Yeah, because there's only 2 large sets left. That's not from the last 2 years.
And
it's GVG and TGT.
And then they have the what's it called? The what were they called? They're not expansions, but they were like
the adventures.
The adventures, yes. So I'm assuming we'll get some of those as well.
Yeah.
Barber's GVG.
Okay, good. Yeah, because GVG is the one I don't want to come back because that's like way too aggressive. And at least right now, we're already in a pretty aggressive meta.
I'm guessing we're gonna get GVG back with the next expansion, though, right?
Yeah. With the next expansion. But when the next expansion comes out, the next actual expansion comes out, that may be a little slower because ROS is also pretty aggressive for a modern like Hearthstone expansion.
That's true.
So we'll see. Like I don't think the world is ready for Boomsday GVG.
Speculating.
Yeah.
We're just speculating.
Like we're not ready for Boomsday GVG. Don't do that to us.
All the mechs.
It's coming. Just not yet. Just not yet. Like save it, Blizzard. Save it for a time when you balanced mostly the other like sets, and then you can blow it up for a fun 2-month-long event meta where everyone just picks mechs.
The mech meta.
Oh my God. Okay, I want to give a shout out now to our Patreons at patreon.com/grinandgoat. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. Our top Patreons are 4P, Afro Ninja TB, Changyun, Eric L, Joshua C, Kirby 5 Life, and RV Night Train. Thank you guys so much for your support. You help keep the lights on here at the Lightforge. Any last words, Tex, or any other thing you want to talk about before we end the podcast?
Yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction, just a little slower than hopeful, but we're moving in the right direction. That's the positive. We're not going backwards. So, and we're slowly getting more attention brought to the arena. So we're going forward at least.
It's been a 6-year process now, but we are
The last
going in the right
year
direction.
or so we're moving in the right direction. So if we speed up how fast we're going in the right direction, I'd be much appreciated. But we're going in the right direction.
All right.
So
yes.
Hope. We'll be hopeful.
Yes. All right. Okay, so anyway, again, guys, this is Tex. You can find him at twitch.tv/Tex. Tex is spelled TTEXXX. And we're gonna do a run after this, and as usual, in case you're a podcast listener and you don't check the YouTube normally for this, but you are a fan of the Arena Coop, which me and Merps did. Until Merps comes back, there's no more Arena Coops, but every time we get a guest, I try to get them to stay for at least one run so that we can upload a coop onto there. And you can find all of those at youtube.com/grinandgoat. Okay. And the one with text should be uploaded at the same time we normally upload the Arena Coop. All right. Until next week, then. This is actually the last podcast I'm doing from New York. After this, I'm moving to Charlotte. So I want to say I'm really trying to be able to get everything set up there for Sunday. If it doesn't happen and we have to skip one, I apologize in advance. But if you don't see a Lightforge next week, that's probably what happened. But I am like 90% certain that we can make it happen. So fingers crossed. All right. Until next week, or maybe the week after, this is ADWCTA.
And this is Tex.
See you guys.